Today I have a very exciting video for you all. This is going to be my first ever review, and today we are reviewing the Makeup Monsters Dragon Child palette, and I am so excited about this. I'll show you why. Have you seen a palette like this before? Because I have not. This is very unique. It has very different color story than anything else that I've ever seen. And I think we're just going to jump in and do some swatches of this before we start playing with it on our eyes. I actually played with this a little bit last night just to see how it performed. So I have a lot of opinions, but I'll get to those after we do the swatches. So I'm going to start off by swatching by rows. So first I'm going to do this row, and then that row, starting from this side. So as you can see, the colors are extremely pigmented. One thing I will say though, is that look at my hand. I have a really hard time getting the shadows to come off of my hand, and I don't know if that could cause staining on the eyes or, you know, because look at this, I am wiping myself with a makeup wipe right now, and I still cannot get this off. Like, this is really hard. I'm gonna try to wipe my hand on the towel and see how that goes. And as you can see, my hand is still pretty stained. So I'm gonna try to do this test that I've seen other people do. We're gonna do the wipe test and see what the lasting power on these would be. So I'd say that went pretty well. Like, the pigment is still on my hand, especially look at this blue shade. It does not want to come off. So now for the fun part, we're gonna go in and I'm gonna try to create an eye look. Now this palette, it gets extremely dusty. There's a lot of kick up in the palette. I also noticed when I was playing with this last night that the formula reminded me a lot of the Subculture palette. So if you were not into that, you will probably not like this. The colors are so pigmented that they're somehow hard to work with. This is not a beginner palette. Also, the color story in this makes it so that if you know anything about color theory, it's extremely hard to like blend these colors in together because they will mud up and they will make brown. And obviously you don't buy this kind of palette because you want a brown palette. So just keep that in mind, that you need to kind of keep it within the same color family for them not to get all muddy and weird looking. So first off, like I was saying, there's a bunch of fallout in this palette, and so I'm going to put some translucent powder under my eyes just to kind of prevent that. Okay, so I know this looks kind of silly, but this is what needs to be done. So I was looking at this palette for a long time yesterday, and I could not for the life of me figure out what kind of look that I wanted to do, because these colors, they don't really go together. It's not like anything else that I've ever seen. Like, usually I have no problem coming up with color combinations, but for it not to be boring, like, it's hard not to just do like an all blue look or an all purple look or an all this kind of look, you know? But I think I'm going to start around by playing with some of the blues in this palette, and then we'll just kind of take it from there, I guess. So for my transition, I'm going to go in with this color right here, and I want to just show you. The brush picks up a lot of pigment, and there is a lot of fallout, so just keep that in mind and kind of be gentle when you're working with this. So I got you guys a little bit more zoomed in, and we will just see what happens with this. So I'm going to be very careful in the beginning because I do not want to be putting too much shadow on my eye, because I did notice that they do have a tendency to be a little bit patchy if you put on too much, just because of how pigmented these shades are. So I want to show you what this palette looks like just after putting my brush into this color about 4 times now. It's pretty dusty and it's going to be making a mess. This palette does have a lot of kick up, like I said, and so if that's something that bothers you, you might not like this palette, but if you don't mind, then so far I like this palette a lot, but I'm gonna have to keep playing around with it. This is really just a first impression, or maybe it's a second impression because I did kind of play around with it last night, but yeah, let's go in with a different color. I think I'm going to deepen this up with, let's see, what do we want to use? I think I'm going to go in with this shade right here and just lay it out on top, a little bit lower in the crease and on the outer edge of what we already had done. As you can see right here, I went in with a little bit too much on my brush and now it's gotten a little bit patchy, so I'm gonna have to spend some extra time trying to blend this out. I'm gonna go back in with a clean brush and just try to buff this all together, clean it up a little bit, just make it a little more seamless on the edge. So I think what I want to do next is I'm going to cut my crease. I want to do a half cut crease. So I'm going to be cutting my crease here, stopping around the outer 2/3, leaving this part the way it is, and then I'm going to go in with this gorgeous gold shade right here. And then I might end up doing a green on the lower lash line, or maybe a purple. We'll see what happens. For now, I'm going to cut my crease. I'm not going to go too much into detail because this is a review, it's not a tutorial, so I'm going to quickly cut my crease. I'm going to fast forward so you can see how I'm doing it, but I'm not going to be explaining anything. Okay, so the cut crease is done. Now I'm going to go back into that dark blue shade and just deepen up the outer corner and make this a little more opaque on the outer end. Okay, I'm now going to go in with that gold shade and I'm going to be spraying my brush with a little bit of setting spray while applying it, and we will see how it goes. Okay, so I'm gonna be blending these two shades together here in the middle. I'm just gonna go over and like gently pat, and hopefully we'll see a little bit of green showing through because yellow and blue makes green. So far, I'm really liking this palette. I think it's stunning. think what I'm going to do for my lower lash line is I'm going to go into the palette and I'm going to be using the green shade up in the corner here. And we're just going to be smoking that out all over my lower lash line. Okay, so I think this is the final eye look. I'm going to wipe away my little powder that I have here on my eyes. And I didn't seem to get as much fallout today as I did last night when I was playing, but probably because I used a little different shades today. I found that the gray had a lot of fallout to it, and also some of the purples, but the greens and the blues seem to be a lot easier to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up my eyes off camera, and then I'm going to come back with final conclusions. Okay, so here's the final look. I'm going to get a little bit closer so you can see better. Here's what the eyeshadow looks like. So for my first impressions with this palette, I think it's stunning. I think it's very unique. It's something that I do not have in my collection already. All of the shades are very different from really anything else that I've ever seen. I'll give you another look. And yes, it might not be a standalone palette as much as other palettes, but if you don't mind pulling out other palettes to make looks with, obviously you can make a whole look with it like I did today, but I would be using this as a palette that would go with other palettes. The quality of the shadows are great, the pigment is amazing. It is a little bit messy, so if that's something that bothers you, this might not be a palette for you. And if you don't mind it maybe being a little bit of a learning curve to figure out how to work with these shadows, then I would highly recommend it. I really love it. This is not at all a sponsored video. I bought this palette with my own money, and I will promise to always make honest reviews and give you my honest opinions about everything that I try on my channel. And so far for this palette, thumbs up. I like it. I love it. And I will continue to use it. If you guys want to see a palette bingo or a 3-Looks-1 palette with this palette, do let me know down below. Let me know if you plan on picking this palette up or what you think of it. And I will see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.